you've been very active out at protests, educating people on social justice and the realities really of the Black community in this country. So what have those interactions been like virtually over the last few months? And have you seen real change from folks that you've been talking to?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't consider myself anything of a forefront leader. When I look for inspiration, I look at, the Mike B's of the Mike Bennett's of the world. I look at Malcolm Jenkins. I look at, Ben Watson. I look at Kenny Stills. I've gone, I go protest, but at the same time, I'm always learning more information. Like I'm just as frustrated, just like the rest of the world is, in this idea that, there's a police force that isn't really being held accountable when they should be the highest, held accountable to the highest of standards. Yeah. That being said, when you talk about this idea of more, what more can you do? That's what it perpetuates from. It's how can I gain more knowledge to help my people? How can I gain more knowledge to help us as a nation or as an American people? When I say, Black Lives Matter, I also want us as people to be empowered, and at the same time realize us as Americans can go so much far. We've came so far. How much further can we go? More. The answer is always more for me. So, and that's almost in any stipulation. It's just like, at the end of the day, I love that we are looking for solutions, but again, more.
Right. And like, this is something that has really hit home for you, not just in your family, but even with your team. I mean, you were one of the first ones when Drew came out and spoke about the kneeling and the protests. And then again, when he apologized, those are real situations that people are having within their homes, within their companies, that everybody's going interpersonally into. And not to get into the privacy of those conversations with Drew, but what did you glean from all of that? And what can others learn from those type of interactions and those type of teachable moments?
Yeah, I mean, when you just talk about, I look around, it's like I'm on the team. I've been on the team for 9 years, heading on year 10 coming up. It's like I know this man. Like, I know Drew. I feel like I know Drew's heart. You don't ever know, another person 100%. But I feel like I should take that back. I feel like I know Nikki 100% at this point. We've been stuck together for like 5.
Nikki's the GOAT. We know that already. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, this quarantine has made me relearn exactly. Like, dang, all right, you used to like roses. Now you're a sunflower girl. Like, the growth is real, and that's
right.
That's on me. But either way, so we go to Drew Brees, and it's like, this is my teammate. This is somebody who my kids play with his kids. My family knows his family. Like, Drew, like, if I've ever needed information, I could go to Drew and we could talk things out. We've always been able to hatch. There's an open line of communication there. So why would I not use my open line of communication now?
Right.
Like, why would I not be able to have this conversation now? We've had, back in, 2017, when we all, we sat down one game. We took a knee, and then we sat down the London game as a team. And it was like, the next week, it was like we had this whole talk within the team, like, hey, we want to show something. We're going to be unified as a front. If we're going to have that conversation, then fast forward a couple of years, we can always have an open line of communication. So we have those talks, and everybody's been saying, uncomfortable talks lead to a broader understanding, but that's super true. When you talk about exactly what we have as a team, it's like, yo, I'm going to express myself, you express yourself, and we're going to come to an understanding of where we're at. And even if we're not seeing eye to eye, we're going to know where each other stands. But when you talk to Drew, it's like, look, I'm going to show everything. I'm going to gain more knowledge. I'm going to put forth the highest efforts into knowing everything about this position. Because when I say, when I see the American flag, I see both my, grandparents, both my grandfathers serving. I'm like, not everybody can say it, but I can say the same thing. I can say, my grandfather served in the Army. I can say, my uncle served in the Navy. My other uncle served in the Army as well. Yeah. Everybody has a blood tie to it. So when I see, the flag, I see the empowerment. I go on USO tours as well. It's like, when I see this, I know what our troops are putting in overseas. I can only imagine being away from my family for a whole tour. I can only imagine what our military does for us, provides for us in terms of servicing us as a military and protecting our freedoms. And at the same time, when I come back home, I feel like there's more we can gain as a people in terms of all advantages. If everything was equal, then, if everybody had the same playing field, then there would be a real competition. But when you look at it, there's disparities are huge everywhere. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to bridge that gap.
I think part of that, getting to that equality, is really having people go out there and vote. And you have worked really closely with When We All Vote, You see it all
Absolutely.
over your social media. And for me, when I think of getting people not only registered, but out to the polls, the even bigger side of that is the education behind it. So knowing the ballot, knowing your voter rights, and knowing who your candidates are and what they stand for. What has sort of been the message when you're working with When We All Vote and really getting people, especially the younger generation, into active voting?
I mean, I'm blessed. When I was coming up, when I turned 18, like Obama was running for his first term, so like it was immediate yes for me. I was like Obama, like we were running to the polls to vote for Obama. But it's more than just your presidential election.
Yeah.
Like it took me till I was till like the last couple of years to realize like if we can go beyond just presidential, like it starts at mayoral, it starts at the judges you can elect in. There's so much more to it. For me coming from Arizona, you could vote for Sheriff Joe Arpaio back in the day, who was out there giving out peak draws to inmates. Like that's a concept, but it's like
Yeah.
like when you vote, you can actually try and create an impact, and that's where it starts. It starts at not just the presidential, like every 4 years. It starts at the very beginning. Like I need to know who the alderman is. I need to know who the
Yeah.
councilman is. I need to know who the judge is. I need to know everything beyond that. And it's just, again, it's all about this idea of advancing yourself through accruing knowledge, and that is a forever pursuit.
Yeah, and knowing all of that down the line. So people think it's just the presidential race, and it's so much more than that. Your local races, I would argue, are just as important, if not more so, because these are the people that trickle up all the way up to the White House and the presidency. What's one way that you've learned or you've shared for people to really understand what's going on in their local communities, to really activate the change needed to really get us to a point where there is equity amongst communities?
That's the question. I don't have the answer to that. Like
Google is a start. Google is
that would
one
be
start.
look. When we talk about New Orleans, I feel like we have a mayor and Mayor Cantrell in New Orleans, who does her best to try and service her community. At the same time, she realizes that there's these large gaps that
Yeah.
need to be bridged, and is trying to. She has a mayor's fund. She does whatever, but without going through all her politics, as I'm still learning myself. Just going out to the public, I'm like, look, we need a vote, and you get the, well, I feel like my vote doesn't matter. There's always, your vote always matters. I mean, if we could create actual change through our votes, that's where our impact is. Again, we go local before we go national, then we're creating real change. I mean, I'm technically like I get all my absentee ballots from Arizona. Like I usually split time. I'm New Orleans during season. I'm Arizona. I'm still a Phoenician at heart. I'm from Chandler. So I'm still sending my absentee ballots, and my mom's calling me like, "Did you get your absentee ballot? You got to get it for the 20." Like she's making sure, like, and that's really what tunes you in. Is like, oh well, I got to do more. And this probably started maybe 2-3 years ago. 2 years ago, it was like, oh, we got to. I think it was legit. Like, you got to vote no on Prop 202, and I was like, I don't even know what Prop 202 is.
Right.
And then like that's where it's like, oh, there's so many different layers to this. I need to know more.
Yeah.
So when I say vote, and I'm not just encouraging like, hey, go out there and vote presidential. I'm always pushing like start local and then push your way to national. And once we get to national, hopefully we're in a better place. And I couldn't tell you, who to vote for, but I can strongly urge and suggest that, you do your due diligence. I'm not here to say, hey, vote for or vote for this is why. Like I'm voting for it, and this is my why. I can't tell you why. I can't be your reason, but I do know that I want you to do your due diligence. Look at our country now and say, hey, how do I best think that my vote can actually affect change?
And here's the thing. I think a lot of people outside of education within voting and what's going on in your communities, all the way up to the highest level, the education of what's going on around us, within our families, within our communities, learning more about the Black community, that's huge. If y'all are bored at home during quarantine, I have plenty of reading materials for you and documentaries to watch. So for me, and I guess I'll ask you this, what is the biggest thing, like what's next? So once people have taken the time to watch 13th and to watch Just Mercy and to read White Fragility or whatever books they're using to really engage and learn, exactly. Everybody can read White Fragility. I read it too. It's a very, very good book. What's the next step in really moving the needle from your perspective? What do you think we can do after that?
Like when Colin Kaepernick started the Know Your Rights, you know what I'm saying? Like the ability to start up actual initiatives. Again, through giving out the computers, through the Pathways program, finding these initiatives that you feel like creates actual change is my answer. When you talk about once you've accrued knowledge, it's your job to then try and share your knowledge through your platforms, and at the same time go about how you best want to affect change. In my mind, it's always, again, this next generation. So that's why when I give my time and I'm talking to these kids and I'm sliding into these, these Zoom classes, talking to these
One
kids.
more Zoom class, bro.
That's what I'm saying. I'm sliding into actual classes with Zoom. I'm like, hey, everybody, listen to your teacher, pay attention in school, and at the same time, keep accruing knowledge. Let your reading speak for yourself, because your reading can actually expand your knowledge if you're reading the right materials. And it's like, I can always throw out what I'm reading at the time. In my mind, I feel like my dad sometimes growing up. Like I'm spitting knowledge here. I'm hoping somebody's picking it up. And when I was younger, I was not. So I can't I can't really expect the next generation to be like, yeah, I'm gonna take that 100%. Read more. Like, I can't be like, yeah. So Cam said, he reads, 2 books a month. So I'm gonna read 2 books a month on this, and this, and this, and different categories. But I hope eventually, if I say it enough, something will soak in. Just like, Pops was like, hey, you need to run more. You need to run more. You need to run the 400. You out here just throwing discus. You need to run the 400 in high school. Like why? But it all has a method to the madness. So when I'm like, hey, we all need a vote. They're like, well, I feel like the electoral votes, you need to vote beyond. Like, stop looking at just national. Vote at a local. I need you to start knowing exactly what can help us as a nation, then us as a people, of course.
In terms of like just your if people glean one thing from the message you're trying to send right now, what would that be?
I mean, in terms of where we are, one, I'm gonna urge you to stay safe, wear a mask. That's the first.
Lord, please. Yeah.
Coming up on football season, try and keep everybody safe. But I always urge people to educate themselves. There's this stigma for some reason that's been attached to Black Lives Matter, that people get upset and automatically jump on this opposite side, like all lives matter, blue lives matter, his life matter, your life matters. Right. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying when we're seeing these things, when we're reacting to these things, when we feel like this sort of struggle has been going on you could track it for hundreds of years. I feel like as a people, as a person in America, as an American, North American, as a not person within the United States of America, I feel like we can best advance by addressing one situation and not letting something else sidetrack you. Let the main thing be the main thing. When you talk about Black Lives Matter, I'm not excluding anybody. I'm also inclusive, because when we go to these rallies, it's every color in there. There's black, there's white, there's Mexican. It's a movement for a reason. It's not just a propensity term of like, hey, this is all just us. Yeah. Us is not just, again, it's not just Black Lives Matter. It's all of us. As a nation, we can improve standards for everybody, with this being the main focus right now. And then we move on. Once we clear this section, again, the disparity is eye-opening. When you just talk about police brutality, when you talk about, when you say social justice reform, this is things that we have, steps that we have to do. We need to clear as a nation. It's not something that I want to do. We need to clear. And that's it. It's not something that's just you can just turn the TV off on. No, this is every day that we know is going on. When you talk about your Ahmaud Arbors, you talk about your George Floyds, you talk about Breonna Taylor. I mean, there's so many instances every time you turn on, and I think that's really what it is in this pandemic. Like, guys haven't been able to turn off the TV or go to social media or hide behind this fact that there's so many ongoing disparages in our nation. You can't hide from it now. You have to face it, and let's face it together.